Ave Maris Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legionaries of Christ, and I'm a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today, we're on day 35. We're almost done Sacrosanctum Concilium. We are covering 124 to 127 on the use of sacred art. If you want to follow along, we have a reading plan and more details at sqpn.com/Vatican. We're in the chapter 7, Sacred Art and Sacred Furnishings. Yesterday, we talked about sacred art is valuable pointing towards God. The Church adopts various styles and judges it. And today, we're going to talk about aspects of arts like what is appropriate, the veneration of images, and the pastoral care of artists, right? Because we can't just abandon artists because they have an important role to play in the Church. So let's read paragraph 124. Ordinaries, by the encouragement and favor they show art, which is truly sacred, should strive after noble beauty rather than mere sumptuous display. This principle is to apply also in the matter of sacred vestments and ornaments. Let bishops carefully remove from the house of God and from other sacred places those works of artists which are repugnant to faith, morals, and Christian piety, and which offend true religious sense by either depraved forms of lack of artistic worth, mediocrity, or pretext. And when the churches are built, let great care be taken that they be suitable for the celebration of liturgical services and the active participation of the faithful. Right? So this is the idea of what is appropriate sacred art and what needs to be used in this circumstance, right? It needs to be appropriate for the circumstances, right? This is art that's going to be used in the liturgy, whether directly, like the art of the chalice or something like that, or indirectly, it's the art that's on the back wall of the church where we're going to celebrate Mass, right? And so there is this idea of noble simplicity over this overly sumptuous display, of value there, right? That sacred thing. And it also is even in the vestments as well, like the chasuble, stole, etc. the priests will wear. And there's this idea of removing inappropriate art. In recent years, we've had a number of displays in churches, especially in Anglican UK cathedrals, where it's like some kind of completely non-Christian artwork displayed that really isn't appropriate. Mostly they're, like I said, they're Anglican, they're not Catholic, that's fortunate, but the idea is they should be removed, right? Or themes or artwork that isn't appropriate, lack of artistic worth, mediocrity, and pretense. I think also implicitly it's considering the artist behind them. If people, when they look at the art, they think of the artist and the artist has problems. This is where I think things like Rupnik's art and the removal of Rupnik's art comes in, where somebody presented at the Catholic Media Conference like last year, say, hey, we should keep Rupnik's art up and we should keep using it for all these things. And basically everybody from the most liberal to most conservative to whatever else, they're all like, no, this reminds us all of the abuse he made, right? And he is repugnant to, Christian faith, morals, and Christian piety. Maybe whether you want to debate the value of his art, independent of him, if it was made by a simple parish priest who just at the parish down the road, who's perfectly fine and has no abuse issues, there can be a debate there, whether you're a fan or not. But I don't think there's any debate about how repugnant of a moral life he lived, where he made mockery of Mass, he did sexual abuse of consecrated women, religious sisters and such. So, and there's also, think about how it'll fit into the parish. There's a value in having all the art in the parish same style, so it kind of fits together. You can sometimes go to certain places and certain things don't fit together. I remember reading about a poor parish in one of the magazines asking for money to help out the poor parish and things like that. And they'd point out the nativity scene they made from different ones. And so different things in the nativity scene were different sizes. That's not the best, but if that's all you have because you're poor, that's fine. But in that same sense, there should be a harmony in the different elements in the same church. So paragraph 125 is on venerating images. And I think it's important to note venerate versus worship. And so I just want to read the definition of venerate from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, because I think this is important, because so often certain Protestants will accuse Catholics of worshiping images, and we don't. We venerate images. Even an image of Jesus, I don't worship that image. I would worship Jesus. If, I worship him in the Eucharist, I worship him, in spirit and truth, but I don't worship the image I have of Jesus on my desk here. So let's read from Merriam-Webster. 1. To regard with reverential respect or with admiring deference. 2. To honor an icon, a relic, etc. with ritual act of devotion. Right? So those type of things, 1, that venerate, regard with reverential respect or with admiring deference, that can apply even to non-religious things, right? So you look at how we treat the U.S. flag, at least in the U.S., where you don't want to touch the ground. You have to, if you're going to fold it, you deferentially have to fold this way. You should, in a lot of circumstances, you should salute the flag, or you should, all those things. We're treating it with reverential deference. I don't think, well, at least most people, maybe some people would say, but I don't think most people think they're worshiping the flag. I don't think most Americans would have any issue with the kind of deference, veneration we give the flag. As a note, I am not an American. I am probably, by the time this podcast ends, I am in the last stages of moving from a green card to being a citizen. Anyways, let's read the actual text of 125. The practice of placing sacred images in churches so that they may be venerated by the faithful is to be maintained. Nevertheless, their number should be moderate and their relative position should reflect right order. For otherwise, they may create confusion among the Christian people and foster devotion of doubtful orthodoxy, right? So this idea of having a reasonable number, right? I don't know if you've seen, there's kind of a stereotypical pre-Vatican II thing where they have the whole thing behind the altar with a whole bunch of saints. And this is say, hey, well, might it be better to have like one or two bigger things of saints so it's very clear and very obvious? That's a good question. I mean, there's not like an absolute rule in that, but to at least consider that. And this idea that veneration is good, right? There's certain things that need to be corrected where maybe people venerate a saint more than Jesus. I remember reading in Italy, it was something like a significant portion more prayed to Padre Pio than to Jesus in the past year. And that's like, okay, like that's a problem, right? That is undue veneration. That's a problem. And we need to moderate if it can start becoming too much of a worship of the image, right? Even good images, even like Our Lady of Guadalupe, the image in Mexico City, they have to be careful because some people might have the temptation to kind of do that. You can do a lot. If you ever go into an Easter church, there'll be a lot of devotion to the icons that can give you a sense of that we can do this bowing, we can do this kissing, we can do this veneration without doing worship. So continuing on, we move to paragraph 126, which is about bishops judging the art and getting help, right? Because not every bishop is going to be able to understand the context of art. Like, I don't want to be a bishop, but, being a seminary professor, it's theoretically possible at least. And if I became a bishop, I'm not going to have the best skills at judging the art. I'm going to need help. So anyways, let's read it. When passing judgment on works of art, local ordinaries shall give a hearing to the Diocesan Commission on Sacred Art, and if needed, also to others who are especially expert, and the commission is referred to in Articles 44, 45, and 46. Ordinaries must be very careful to see that sacred furnishing or works of value are not disposed or dispersed, for they are the ornaments of the house of God. So a few kind of things here for context. Or local ordinary just means a bishop or someone with the role like a bishop. If you're in a mission territory, some of those, there'll be a priest assigned to that. There are still a handful of the world, what they call territorial abbeys, where the abbot is actually the local ordinary. But in the vast majority of cases, the local ordinary is the bishop. And then paragraphs 44 to 46, which was talking about setting up the Diocesan Liturgical Commission, right? So that can help with this, right? And that can help with good judgment because those are the kind of people who are expert in the liturgy, at least. Some will probably be expert in art too. And then proper disposal of art. We don't just toss in the garbage. Don't just like let it be used for improper purposes if it was an image of devotion. You usually, if it's metal, you often melt it down. If it's cloth or something like that, or you'll often bury it or burn it. You do that with things that aren't necessarily art, but like, for example, if the purificator they use to purify the chalice and such after Mass, or wipe it between people if you receive under 2 species at your parish, those will wear out of time, and you want to burn them. You don't want to just toss them in the garbage and things like that. Do them in a devout way. And also, a lot of this artwork in old churches that are closed in the U.S., there's a number of warehouses that hold them. And if you're looking to build a new church or an extension, you can often go there and look through their artwork and often get artwork for much cheaper than it would cost you because they have to pay the bills and things like that. But they're not in the business of trying to make exorbitant profits. They are run by individuals, but they're regulated by the church. So they are really, required not to make exorbitant profits. I remember one pastor I knew, he wanted to build an adoration chapel, a separate building kind of across the parking lot from the rest of the church. And one of the things he did is he went to one of these first, found a series of stained glass windows. They were all the same size, got them measured like down to the 32nd of an inch or whatever it was. And then when he went to the architects to build this adoration chapel, he said, these are the stained glass windows that are going to go in. They're exactly the size. And here's the picture of them so you can visualize it as far as placing the rest of it in there. And because they built this specifically for that, it looked like they were just made for that, but they were much cheaper because they got them from an old church. So let's read paragraph 127, our last paragraph for today, which is on taking care of artists. Bishops should have a special concern for artists, so as to imbue them with the spirit of sacred art and the sacred liturgy. This they may do in person or through suitable priests who are gifted in knowledge and love of art. It is also desirable that schools or academies of sacred art should be founded in those parts of the world where they would be useful, so that artists may be trained. All artists who prompted by their talents desire to serve God's glory and Holy Church, should ever bear in mind that they are engaged in a kind of sacred imitation of God the Creator, and are concerned with works destined to be used in Catholic worship to edify the faithful and to foster their piety and their religious formation. So that's the paragraph. Obviously, we need special care for different audiences, and the importance of artists, the importance of understanding their art, helping them understand the liturgy, so they can put art into the liturgy. And they often have unique personalities, even ones who are Catholic, even ones who are living in a quarter church teaching. They often have very unique personalities that can be a little different and can sometimes be a little challenging for others in the church. Right? They're not necessarily perfect, they have those ideas. And there's an important work because we do need good art in the church. In 2000 and 2025, there is in the Jubilee, there's a special Jubilee for artists that the Vatican at least has that care. And obviously, like it said, oftentimes the bishop will delegate this to a priest who's more skilled in the areas of art. And then they, in turn, should think of art and the church and the liturgy. How is this going to fit into liturgy? How does this express Christian doctrine? How does it edify the faithful, right? And things like that, which are important for how you make art, especially art that's going to be used in a liturgical setting, like in a mass or things like that. So thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can donate to help StarQuest produce it. Another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time, monthly, or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow we're going to continue with the last paragraphs of Sacrosanctum Concilium, which is paragraphs 128 to 130. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which can be a blueprint for the Catholic Church. Go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X for more information on the podcast, including things like a reading plan and playlists.
Amen.